All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's the morning after. I wasn't able to go on immediately after the game like I would like to. My wife is out of town, so I had to take care of the kiddos, which was great. Loved having the kids for the weekend. Loved watching some playoff football. And most of all, I loved a 49er victory. And here we are on a victory Monday. And I just kind of wanted to do not only a recap of the game, but kind of a recap of the week. So, a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans, first of all, shout out to Dallas Cowboy fans. You guys were a class act on Twitter. A lot of them, with a lot of conversations through Twitter spaces, just really broke down the game. They were a very intelligent fan base. And then most of them, the guys that we were talking to pretty regularly, were willing to come into the spaces last night and talk about how the 49ers were the better team. They give all credit to San Francisco. Good luck to San Francisco moving forward against Green Bay. And I just thought it was a class act. So shout out to Cowboys fans. I made a suggestion to Dallas that they should hire Harbaugh, bring in Harbaugh. Harbaugh would bring in Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator, and I just think that that's a great way to win. That team lacks toughness. That team needs somebody who's a quarterback whisperer, and I feel like Harbaugh would be perfect for him. But that's enough about the Cowboys. They are history. We are on to Green Bay. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, like I said, shout out to you guys. That being said, let me talk about what Dallas fans and 49er fans, the back and forth that happened this week. So going into the game, Dallas Cowboy fans kept talking about what if. What if we make Jimmy Garoppolo go win the game? And I was very honest in those spaces, right? And I just said, listen, if Jimmy Garoppolo has to go win the game, they're not going to win the game. That's never ideal. I said that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a turnover this game. I don't know if it'll be an interception. I don't know if it'll be a fumble, but at some point, Jimmy Garoppolo, that's something like face there. Jeez, what's that? But at some point, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to turn the ball over. Now, I also said that I believe that Dak or the Cowboys would also turn it over. It would be one turnover each, and it shouldn't be a problem. But if Jimmy turned it over multiple times, then it could snowball and the game would be over. Well, it played out pretty much like I expected. Listen, Jimmy Garoppolo now, well, I'm not going to include the playoffs, but in 45 career regular season starts has 46 turnovers. Dallas Cowboys led the league with I believe 33 takeaways, something like that. So chances were Jimmy Garoppolo was going to turn the ball over. It's just something we had to expect going into the game. It happened. Luckily, it didn't cost him the game, and the 49ers were able to win. But one thing that Cowboys fans could not wrap their mind around, and this is what I kept talking about when I would encounter them, is I said, the 49ers are not the same team the final 9 weeks of the regular season. The first 8 weeks of the regular season, you look at it, San Francisco could not stop the run at all. Could not stop the run. They couldn't force a turnover. Now, they were running the ball very well. That's kind of been a part of the 49ers staple the whole year, really outside of when their running backs got injured, but the 49ers have been able to run the ball a big majority of the season. But they could not stop the run and they could not force turnovers. You look at the San Francisco 49ers over the final 9 weeks of the regular season, and then we can even jump into this one. They're forcing turnovers like crazy. I think all but one game they forced a turnover, and there's like 5 games they forced at least two turnovers. And then you add that into the run game and stopping the run. The 49ers have only allowed one team to go over 91 yards rushing in the final 9 games of the regular season. And then it went into this game as well. They only allowed, I think, 77 yards. So this is a completely different team. This is not you. The problem was, and again, they couldn't wrap their mind around. You cannot just look at the whole season. If I were to talk about any team the first 5, 6 weeks of the regular season, good or bad, and compare it to the final, half of the regular season or quarter of the regular season, or however you want to look at it, chances are that team's not going to be the same. Very rarely do teams stay the same. A lot of things happen. Players get better, players get worse, players get injured. The teams, the competition they're playing change. I mean, everything is so different. And that's basically what happened for the 49ers. They are a completely different team. They are now 8-2 in the last 10 games when you include the playoffs. And they're rolling right now. It's a completely different team. So again, that was something that Dallas fans could not comprehend. The other thing, and I found this stat the morning of the game, and to me, it was going to be the difference in this game, and I believe it played out that way, which was 21 personnel. And if you're not familiar, when I say 21 personnel, the first number in the personnel grouping is the amount of running backs on the field. The second number is the amount of tight ends. So if I say 11 personnel, that means one running back, one tight end. If I say 12 personnel, that means one running back, two tight ends. And if I say 21 personnel, which is what we're talking about now, that means two backs, one tight end. The 49ers lead the league in that personnel grouping. They ran it 377 times throughout the regular season. Only two other teams, Baltimore and someone else, ran it. Oh, I think it was Baltimore, New England, went over 200 times that they ran that personnel grouping. And Baltimore was the second most, and they had like 90 something less times that they ran that personnel grouping than the 49ers. So this is a staple of the 49ers offense. They run it very, very frequently. And that's because they have use check, right? Use checks on the field an awful lot. And when he is, they like to run the ball and they will do it over and over and over, and they will do it with success regardless of who you are for the most part. So the Dallas Cowboys, though, on the flip side, only faced, and I know this sounds crazy, but only faced that 21 personnel grouping 53 times in the regular season. Just for contrast, the NFC East, if I remove the Cowboys, only ran that personnel grouping. It was something like 50 something times combined out of all three of those teams, or 60 something times combined, or 60 something times combined. My English, it's hard. It's a tough thing to do. But that is something that Dallas had not seen. And I thought it would be an issue. You can go into a game and talk about, oh, the 49ers think they're the tough kids on the block and we can match their physicality and this and that. It's a whole different thing when you are in the game. Deebo does not go backwards. Elijah Mitchell does not go backwards. That defensive line is big and strong and physical. They do not go backwards. So the moment that game started, and I also told anybody who would listen, I didn't know who would get the ball first. And this was a stat that Cowboys fans were throwing out. When the Cowboys score first, they are 9-0. And I said, I don't know who's going to score first because I don't know who's going to get the ball first. But what I can promise you is the first time the 49ers touch the ball, they will score. I'm not saying it's going to be a touchdown, but they will put points on the board. Shanahan is fantastic in that first drive. I know that they've had those issues recently where they can't put up points in the first half. It happened earlier in the season as well, but I was confident that the physicality and what Dallas had not seen would be the difference, at least early on, until they were able to catch up to it. And the 49ers would score immediately. And that's exactly what happened. So a lot of what happened in this game went pretty much like I expected. Now, I hate to even do this in a playoff game after a big win. But Jimmy Garoppolo is a liability at this point. He's an absolute liability. And I said that basically they asked Jimmy to do nothing and he somehow did less. Let's break it down for a second. He was not asked to do a lot. He had like 177 yards passing, no touchdowns, one interception, airmailed Ayuk, almost had a second interception, and was the reason, according to Shanahan, that they flubbed that fourth down call at the end of the game, which gave Dallas the ball back because he did not allow Trent Williams to get set. So it I know that he had a heroic moments down the stretch of that final regular season game against the Rams, and I don't wanna take that away from him. It was super gutsy. He, again, had his big boy pants on, and when he's in those situations, he does well. He does really well. Like, I'm not gonna take that away from Jimmy. And Dallas fans, this was another thing. Dallas fans were calling him trash all week. He's a bum, and I took exception to that. It's funny because you guys know that I'm all over Jimmy G, but I took exception to that. It's almost like I'm the big brother, and as soon as somebody else in the neighborhood wants to pick on my little brother, like, I'm not having it. Only I can pick on my little brother, right? So only as a 49er fan can I say that Jimmy's not good. The moment you say Jimmy's not good, not acceptable. You cannot do that. Only I can do that. So, anyways, I just thought it was a funny stance that I took throughout the week. But he's a liability right now. And outside of that Falcons game, I know people want to say, well, Trey, he only played good against the 15th ranked passing defense in the Texans. Well, Jimmy's only played good in the final, 6 weeks or so. He didn't have a good game against Seattle. He did not have a good game against the Bengals. I know he had the good final moments, but he did not have a good game against the Bengals, all in all. He had a good game against the Falcons. Yep, I'll give him that. Terrible game against the Texans. Terrible game against the Rams up until, again, he crushed it at the end, which was phenomenal. And then a terrible game again yesterday. So, what, 5 of the last 6 games he's played, he hasn't had a good game. He's had one complete good game. He's had good moments, but he hasn't played well at all. And eventually it's going to be too much for the 49ers. Now, I'm not going to say that he's going to go into Green Bay and play horrible. I don't know what's going to happen, but if I'm a betting man and I have to put everything I have out on the line, I'm going to bet that Jimmy's going to turn the ball over again. And when it happens, what is the situation? Is that going to be the difference in the game? Because the 49ers really don't turn the ball over outside of Jimmy Garoppolo. Elijah Mitchell has what I think one fumble on the year, and that came on a penalty, and it wasn't even recovered by the other team. So really, he doesn't turn the ball over. I know they had the crazy things that happened in that second Arizona game where Kittle fumbled and Ayuk fumbled, but really, special teams early on had some issues. But down the stretch of the season, the 49ers don't turn the ball over. I think the last turnover that wasn't made by Jimmy Garoppolo or by a starting quarterback, I should say, because Lance turned it over against the Texans, by a starting quarterback came in the Falcon game. So they just really don't turn the ball over outside of that. So that is a concern as they go into Green Bay. So I haven't really had a big opportunity to break down Green Bay and dive into it. I'll go back for my Patreon. So if you're not there, subscribe there. I will go back and I will break down that first game, which this is going to be much different, by the way. Elijah Mitchell's going to play. They had Sermon the last game, who carried, I think, 10 times. They trusted Sermon so much that they had Juszczyk take the first carry from scrimmage. Like, just a completely different game. And the 49ers were still able to keep it close. Also, if you look at Green Bay, they're going to have Bakhtiari back. They're going to have Jair Alexander. So this is, again, much like I said, the 49ers were a completely different team the final 9 weeks of the regular season. I was trying to explain that to Dallas fans. Same can be said for Green Bay. So we'll go back and watch that game as a Patreon, and we'll take what we can from it. But ultimately, this is a whole different game. This is a whole different breed. Now, as a 49er fan and as 49er fans, we should all be taking a collective breath or holding our collective breaths, waiting to see what happens with Bosa. I believe that Fred Warner is not going to play. Ankle sprain, they play Saturday. I cannot see him playing. Now, if they can win this game, I would imagine he would be back for the NFC Championship, hopefully in Tampa, so I can go to the game. But that would be my guess. Bosa, however, has a concussion. Those things are iffy. Who knows how long it lingers? I believe he should probably play. If Bosa plays, the 49ers can win this game, even without Fred Warner. I know that Fred Warner is a big piece, but Aziz Al-Shair's had a really good season. Greenlaw's back. So between those two, I think they can hold it down at the linebacker spot. Bosa is going to be so important in this game. So important in this game. So They need him back if they want any shot at going to Green Bay. This is going to be the toughest game of the season. You're going up against the best team in the NFC. You're on the road. 49er fans travel really well, but I cannot imagine there's going to be a lot of them in Wisconsin. I don't see it happening. Green Bay does a great job of selling out early. You got to remember that team is basically owned by a bunch of fans, the way that it breaks down. So chances are not a lot of Niner fans there. It's going to be cold. 6 days, not seven, against the best team in the NFC. This is the toughest game of the season. If they can somehow get past this relatively healthy, I would feel much more confident versus whoever they're playing the following week after getting us an extra day of notice and going on the road against Tampa, the Rams. I don't really care who it is. I would feel very confident in that situation. This is the make or break game of the season. This right here, I believe if they get past this, they get to the Super Bowl. And this is the toughest test. So we'll talk about it all week. I don't want to get too far into it. Huge win for the San Francisco 49ers. We should be very, very happy with that. Shout out again to Cowboys fans for being relatively respectful. I really did not expect that from them. And 49ers won, baby. That's what it's about. They won the game. Yes, they have things that they can work on. There are definitely little micro complaints that I could have about that game. I didn't like when they were up, I think it was 10-0, and they kicked that second field goal. The third down play, they ran the ball. I thought they should have thrown it there. At that point, Jimmy was playing pretty good. I felt like you should take your chance on third down. Now, if you wanted to run it on third down because you were going to go for it on fourth down, I was cool with that. But they didn't go for it on fourth down. They just ran it on third down. So should have thrown the ball there. But again, these are our micro complaints. Ultimately, the 49ers went in. They took care of business on the road where they were slight underdogs and got it done. And now they're headed to Green Bay. Let's be happy about it. We'll break it down all week long here on Last Second Sports. I appreciate y'all. And until Tuesday is when I will be doing my next show here, the Spotlight Show.